Therefore, you're all this frozen face.
I addressed a balloon.
A balloon?
Yes, a balloon.
Who was that?
A lunch supper that Ian Bruce and Tony Borthwick held in their Michelin star restaurant in Leith. And believe it or not, they could not get a haggis. So we had a balloon sitting on the table addressed, and when you got into it, by God, it made a noise.
On one occasion, I was addressed a haggis at a little function my daughter organised in the hospital where she was working, and because they couldn't have a real haggis, they had one of these little stuffed toys. So I had to address this thing that was looking up at me.
I brought along a tin because I've had to address that before now. We couldn't get a real haggis. You managed with a tin. It's very sharp knife.
When I see your grants, on occasion, I worked down in the Midlands for 3 years, and I was summoned in my first year down there to a regional meeting in Wolverhampton by my regional manager on the 25th of January. And I, of course, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't come. It's a national holiday in Scotland." He said, "You'll come. You're the new boy." And as we broke up for lunch, he took me to one side and said, "Jim, I know this is a special day for you today. So I've spoken with the catering staff in the kitchen, and they've got some haggis. Can you talk to it?" So I went through to the kitchen to see the chef, and it was Grant's tin haggis they had, strangely enough. So it was brought in to me.
Oh, yeah. You do know it.
Oh, Willie.
Julie brought in, and the young girl who carried it in for me was, I would say, from the West Indies. And she stood by my side waiting to see what was happening. And you know how when we were young, we read comics, wee balloons came out with people's thoughts. I'm quite sure if a little balloon had come out of her head, she would have been saying to herself, "My God, I think we've got strange customs."
Well, anyway, gentlemen, shall we start proceedings?
Please, let's.
Please do.
Do you want to start us off, Charlie, with a wee song? Would that be acceptable to you?
Just an apology from Angus Middleton for you tonight, boys. Can't make it, unfortunately.
Can he not make it? That's a shame. I've also got apologies from Callum Watson. Sadly, he had to call off very much at the last minute because I fear he couldn't get a microphone that was equal to the Great Highland Bagpipe.
We'll try this one. You should know this one. See if I can remember all the words. Yestreen I had a pint of wine, a place where bodies saw no. Yestreen lay on this priest o' mine, the Cowden locks the hungry Jew in wilderness, rejoicing of his manna, was nothing to my honey bliss upon the lips. The monarchs tack both east and west, frae Indus to Savannah. Be me within my straining grasp, the gentle form, there I'll despise imperial chants and empress or sultana, and dying raptures in her arms I'll be unpacked. We are. Awa ye vaunting God o' day, awa thou pale Diana, ilk starry high tide, twinkling ray, and I'll take my eye. Come in a raven plumage night, ilk moon and stars withdrawn, and he an angel, and here I my transport we, my the kirk and state may join and tell today sick things I'm on. The kirk and state may go to hell, and I'll be my she is the sunshine, oh my, to live but her I'm on. Had I on her part wishes three, the first should be my had I on her part wishes three, the first should be my
Oh,
Bravo.
Thank you.
Charlie.
fabulous, Charlie. Well done. Superb.
Super talking about Tarbowton the other day. I was on the other day.
Lovely.
Grand stuff. Grand stuff. Well, sorry.
Perfect.
Is that the Adam's Ale you're on there, Willie?
No, it's the gin.
You're looking like you've lost a bit of weight. Am
No. No.
I just making that up?
It's just the collar and tie, Cammy, that makes him look younger.
That's what it is. That's what it is. You'll need to give me a shot of your webcam then.
It's all prisms.
Well, David, how would you feel about taking us away with the immortal memory?
Okay, happy to do that. Just make sure that I'm hitting the right buttons, Cammy, while I bring up the images. And boys, let me know if you can see the image coming up here. Let me just check it now.
Bless you.
Looking very smart, Jimmy.
Well,
Very smart.
I don't know whether to wear a dinner suit or my teacup. So a compromise.
Is it no cold
Find
on
the
that
share
brave
screen,
face?
David.
Can everyone see the bard?
No.
No?
I don't think you've shared your screen just yet, David. You'll need
Stand
to go
by.
back onto Zoom.
Okay.
And then if you move your mouse down towards the bottom of the screen, it's the green button.
Yeah, stand by. Got to go back to slide 1. Stand by. Share screen, select. Yes, okay. That's that one. Share.
There we are.
Go to image. Yep.
That's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Is that better?
That's, yeah, you can see that.
We're there now, David.
Great.
Perfect.
You can see the skirving image. One of my favorites.
Yep.
So can the boys all see what we should be seeing?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hang on. I'm just going to minimize that. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, everybody. So looking forward to this this anniversary, in fact, of the Bard's arrival in Edinburgh in 1786. And Cammy and I have talked and thought about this and thought that this audience tonight, this group of us, we need no introduction to this man and to his life and his work and his legacy. So what I've done is to assemble some images which we have used in our work on the history of the poet, particularly in the work on the Burns Encyclopedia with Kirsty McHugh and Jerry Carruthers. Some of the images you will not have seen before, and some of them you will be familiar with. So let me just go through them fairly quickly, but please interrupt at any time if you hear anything which is incorrect, because these are all capable of adjustment and improvement as we go forward. And the first thing to say is that these images that you're going to see are not mine. They're not mine, they're yours. They belong to all of us. And they come from Historic Environment Scotland, most of them, some from the University of Edinburgh where I work, some are my own family stuff, but all of them particularly we're indebted to the Scran Archive, which now consists of, would you believe, 480,000 images telling the story of this country of ours, of Scotland, her history, her geography, her geology, the lives of our ordinary people down the centuries. And in this case tonight, the life of one of our extraordinary people. And these are two of our researchers in Salisbury Place here in Edinburgh who bring together these images, which are freely available, would you believe, to scholars and to teachers in primary, secondary education to show. This is Alan Roberts' image, which I love. This is the big sky country of the Mearns. This is where the Burns family came from. You're looking westbound towards the beginning of the Grampians away in the distance, the sea, the North Sea behind us. And I remember showing this at the memory at the Fatherland Burns Club in Stonehaven, where I was wanting to know what the name was of the poet's original family. I thought it was Burness, but the oldest member, who was 90, said to me, "No, Davy," he said, no, the name, and it still is here, is Burness. Burness. And the accent is clearly on the first syllable. So that was the name taken by William Burns when he left this country, great farming country here, the How of the Mearns, to make his way in the world. And if any of you have got an image of William Burns, tell me about it, because we have looked for years and we believe, I'm afraid, that there is no image of William Burness as he was, and Burns, the name, of course, which his son took after his arrival in Ayrshire. And this painting, or rather etching by John Fade, will have to do for the yeoman farmer, this remarkable man in the Burns story. Hardy of body, independent of mind, a man who feared neither man nor beast, but only his maker, and saw that his sons followed on afoot. And he came here from the Mearns. And this is an image from Brown and Oldenburg, showing Edinburgh as it was when William Burness arrived here, we think in the year 1748. And for context, that is 2 years after the defeat of the Jacobite rising of the 45 in April 46 in Inverness-shire at the Battle of Culloden. And here is Edinburgh as it was. The castle on the left, of course, and the two great streets you can see running to the right, the top one being the High Street and below that the Cowgate. This was still a walled city, and it was through the walls of Edinburgh that William Burness would have arrived. And if you look at the top of the image there, behind the legend Edinburgh, you'll see the site of the new town, still virgin farmland, which the poet himself was to know. And this is the High Street of Edinburgh as William Burns would have seen it when he arrived here in 1748. He was 27 years old and he was a trained landsman. So he was exactly what was required for this object here, because you're looking down from about 1,000 feet above Edinburgh 100 years ago. This is the first aerial shot that I've got of the place where I work. If you can see my mouse here, this is the Institute for Advanced Study in the Humanities, where I'm based with 30 colleagues from the University of Edinburgh. And we're on the fringe of the meadows here. This wonderful oval great space is Edinburgh's great park of the meadows. And it was in this park that William Burness worked for 2 years for the man who had drained the park and was turning it into an area of recreation for the citizens of Edinburgh. And for those of us who are golfers, on the top left here, off to the left of the meadows park itself, this is Bruntsfield Links. And our historians are not entirely unanimous, but broadly so, that it was here on that piece of turf 600 years ago that the great game of golf began. But here William Burness worked for 2 years, and then he set off on his travels further west. This is an interesting map given to me by a colleague of mine in the university who's a linguist, and it shows the various divisions of the Old Scots language in which William Burnes and later his son Robert Burns were, of course, fluent, showing at the bottom here the Borders dialect of Old Scots here, the Galavidian dialect here in the southwest, and then the language that he would have heard from his mum, West Central Scotland Old Scots dialect, here in Ayrshire, here in East Lothian, and then in the northern part of it in Fife and up towards Dundee. But his father would have spoken to Robert and to his brother Gilbert and to the other children in the Doric dialect of the northeast of Scotland, because it was from the Mearns, as we've mentioned, that William Burnes came. So Burns, you can see in his writings much later, the two distinct dialects of Scotland, the Doric of the northeast and the Ayrshire of the southwest. On the left, of course, top left here is the Gaeltacht, the Gaelic-speaking areas of Scotland, as they were at that time. And up in the very far north, the Caithness dialect, and then up to Orkney and Shetland. Anyway, that was what Burns would inherit from his father. And William Burnes left Edinburgh, passing through the West Port. He must have done, because it was a walled city, as we've mentioned, not aware, of course, that the castle which he was passing would be one day matched by the cottage that he would build in far off Alloway, as one of the most visited and famous structures in Scotland. And he went to Ayrshire. He was taken from the working on the meadows for Sir Thomas Hope of Rankeeler, for whom he worked for 2 years. I think he was asked by Fairley of Fairley, who was a friend of Keeler, an Ayrshire laird who had seen the quality of William Burnes's work. He said, "Would you like to work for me in Ayrshire, Mr. Burnes?" And obviously William Burnes had agreed to that, and off he went to Ayrshire, carrying with him one of these very important testimonials to his religious observance. If you traveled from one place to another one in Scotland in those days, you must carry with you a testament from your minister, from the kirk, attesting that you were worthy of having a place in the pew in the kirk where you were going to arrive. And this is a very interesting person. This minister here is you see Thomas Walker. This was the minister of Dundonald in Ayrshire, where Burnes arrived after his 2 years in Edinburgh. And this is the testimonial that he carried down to Alloway when he moved from Fairley, that is from Dundonald, further south to Alloway, just outside Ayr. And that takes us way forward to his son, because the image that you see here is an image which I commissioned some years ago from the artist James Naismith, no relation of the poet's portraitist. This shows what happened in the flat owned by the family with whom Burnes lodged in his second winter in Edinburgh. This is the Cruikshank's house on the north branch of St. James's Square, and at the harpsichord is Jenny Cruikshank, who was a great harpsichordist and singer. She was only 13 years old, and we have from the minister's son, who was the professor of Latin at the University of Edinburgh. Thomas Walker's son, Josiah Walker, gives us, thank God, an eyewitness account of looking round the door of the house of the Cruikshanks in St. James's Square and saw the poet at work on a table, strewn with papers, while at the far side of the room at her harpsichord was Jenny Cruikshank, who would play a tune over and over and over again as Burnes set the words to the music. He always worked from the tune to the words, a matter which, as we'll see later, was of great interest to Beethoven, who was to set many of these songs for piano and orchestral accompaniment. Anyway, that was Thomas Walker. Over to Ayr goes William Burnes after a couple of years in Dundonald, working for Fairley of Fairley. He crossed not the bridge in front of you, but the bridge off to the left. That's the Auld Brig of Ayr. going south towards Alloway, where he would come to rest, as we all know, and where he would build the cottage seen here in the famous painting of 1870. It's a very good painting because it shows there's been a northerly wind blowing. You're looking at the road going south from Ayr down to Maybole, and look at the collie on the left. You see its tail is tucked between its legs. That wind is coming from behind the camera. It's a north wind. It's very, very, it's a snail day. And here there was the cottage, of course, in which his son would be born. Down to Maybole goes William Burns after a couple of years working, as you know, in Alloway. And he meets a farmer's daughter in Maybole. And this was a real find. This came out of our work on the encyclopedia. I had given up all hope of discovering any image of the Reverend James McKnight, DD, who married Robert Burns's parents. William Burns and Agnes Brown were married in Maybole in the old kirk, as you know. And this man on the left here, if I could just point to him, this man here, this is the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, being addressed on the left by the standing advocate here. This is a lawyer proposing a motion to the General Assembly. And this, by the way, is a well-known lawyer too. This is the great diarist of Edinburgh of the time. This is James Boswell of Auchinleck, another Ayrshire man. But the important man here is this guy, because we think in probably November 1757, James McKnight, DD, later to be moderator of the General Assembly, by the way, rose in his pulpit in Maybole and spoke the opening words of a drama, the direct result of which, gentlemen, is our zooming here tonight in our various parts of Scotland. Because using the formulae of the old Kirk of Scotland, we know exactly what he would have said, because we've checked it out with the Kirk. And he would have said, there is a purpose of marriage between Agnes Brun, spinster, residing in Maybole, in the parish of Maybole, and William Burns, bachelor, residing at Alloway in the parish of Ayr, of which proclamation is hereby made. And of course, the result of that was the birth of 7 children to that marriage, the first of which was our poet, seen here with his tutor in a representation from the Victorian era. The tutor being, of course, the English master from James Murdoch from my old school, from Ayr Academy, as mentioned earlier. And this was his house in the Sandgate of Edinburgh. This is Murdoch's house, from which he would travel down to teach the children of the farms to the south of Ayr, who had been assembled by William Burns and other farmers, so that the children would get an episodic but a very thorough education. Growing up, of course, on the farm, first of all at Mount Oliphant and then at Lochley. This is one of my favorite images of the harvest moon, if you like, in September for the wheat, and then harvesting, of course, in the spring for their winter barley, having his first his love affairs with the farmers' daughters round about. And of course, coming here to the Bachelors Club, with which we are all familiar and which is such a joy to visit. And I will personally never forget my first evening in the Bachelors Club with you guys. And sometime before that, give the immortal memory there, where in that very house where the poet learned to debate and to argue and to play the violin and to dance, not always to his father's approval. Now, what we know about Burns's childhood is largely due to the guy on the right of this image. It took me a long time to find this, but the man on the right of this image is John Moore, Dr. John Moore, who wrote to Burns after he became famous after the publication of the Kilmarnock edition, asking for Burns's own memories of his own childhood and upbringing. This is a painting by Gavin Hamilton, who was a famous artist of the time. On the right is Dr. Moore, as I've mentioned. At the back, in his red jacket, is the Duke of Hamilton, because Moore, to whom we owe all the story about Burns's youth and childhood, Moore was the companion of the Duke on his grand tour of Europe. And very interestingly, for those of you who are historians, on the left here is John Moore Jr. He is then just a schoolboy, but he would go into the army, have a great stellar career. And this is the future Sir John Moore of Corunna, who would be responsible for evacuating the army after the defeat from the French in 1809 in Spain, and would be killed in action in that famous action later on. But this is the two Moores on the right and left, and the 8th Duke of Hamilton in the center. And down on the farm, probably at Lochley, this arrived. The poems of Robert Ferguson, the one and only slim volume by the man that Burns and myself and most of you too, I'm sure, regard as one of the great stars of the Scottish Enlightenment, the great poet of Edinburgh. And this arrived to be read by the teenage Burns at Lochley, and Burns never forgot it, as we shall see later, of course, when we see him in Edinburgh. And this is interesting too, I think. This is the main road looking west. Mauchline is behind the camera, as it were. You're looking west towards the sea in Ayrshire, and on the right, in the middle distance, is Mosgiel, the farm taken over after their father's death by Robert and Gilbert and their sisters and their widowed mother. And always interesting, isn't it, to all of us who study the Bard, that he never spoke about the view off to the west. We see nothing about the Firth of Clyde there, the island of Arran in the distance. There's only one mention of one object visible away to the west. And that of course, is Ailsa Craig. Meg was deaf as Ailsa Craig. That is the only time we find our poet talking about the superb views, which I remember as a child at Prestwick, looking out over that great view to the west, and not just Arran, but beyond it on a clear day from the hill behind Mosgiel, you can see the Mull of Kintyre. You can see all the way to Argyll. But Burns was a poet of people, of individuals. He was a proponent of morality, not a poet of place. That was for other poets to do. Cammy, I think, is going to give us later the Cotter's Saturday Night, and this is certainly one of my favorite images by one of our great artists of one of the poet's greatest early poems. This is by Sir David Wilkie, the patriarch opening the Great Hall Bible to read an extract from it, as was the tradition among yeoman farmers all over Scotland in the 18th century on a Saturday night as they prepared for the Sabbath the following day. Cammy, I sent this to Cammy earlier because we had seen it together on a previous occasion. This is the moment where the younger cottagers retire and the parents pray for their future welfare, as we shall hear later from Cammy himself. And then out comes the first edition, the great Kilmarnock edition, as you see here. You could have one for, I think it was 3 shillings at the first printing in 1786, in the summer of that year. The last one that sold at auction went for between 80 and 90,000 pounds at a hammer price. And the country at last woke up. The GPO woke up to the fact that Burns was one of our greatest writers that England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland ever produced, and produced properly illustrated and properly textualized the first lines of the great poem To a Mouse. And many of you who have been in Ayrshire will recall that in 1984, on the 200th anniversary of ploughing up the Mouse at Mosgiel, there was a reenaction of the ploughing that took place then. And everyone was involved. The various Burns clubs were involved. They made very careful organization of it all, but they forgot to tell the cops. The police were not notified that there was to be reenactment of the ploughing up of the Mouse at Mosgiel on this particular day. 10,000 people showed up. There was traffic chaos all over Ayrshire. But a wonderful reenaction of that occasion. This is the southern park of Mosgiel. And on a memorable morning after the Burns supper in Mauchline, myself and the aforesaid Reverend James Curry were taken up to Mosgiel to meet Alec Wiley, who was then the farmer of Mosqueo. And we were taken down from the farmhouse to this particular field. And we were then made to stand in a circle as there was a pointing was made to an anonymous piece of grass in the field. And we all bowed our heads reverently because that, said Wiley, it was there, exactly there. The mouse was ploughed up, so it was. Love it. Not just the mouse, but even smaller. I love this one, don't you? Wee, modest, crimson-tippet flower, who's met me in an evil hour. For I man crush among the stour thy slender stem. To save thee now is beyond my poor, thou bonny gem. And even smaller in the kirk at Mauchline. But some poor the gifty geese, to see ourselves as others see us. But for many a blunder free us, and foolish notion. The only image I know of the moment in the kirk where he saw the mouse on the hem, or rather the flange of Mrs. Lunardi bonnet in front of him. I don't know the author of this. Anyone who knows, please tell me. This is Burns hearing the spinet played for the first time at the Reverend Laurie's manse, the Loudon manse near Galston in the Irvine Valley. And it was his friendship with the Lauries which was of huge import to his future, because the Reverend George Laurie here sent a letter to Edinburgh saying that he had read the Kilmarnock edition of the poems, and he sent that to his friend Thomas Blacklock, also a minister of religion, but not practicing, because he was renowned in Edinburgh at the time as a literary critic. And he was always receiving books and pamphlets and thin volumes of verse. And this one arrived as well. But Blacklock set the Kilmarnock edition by him, by his chair. He did not read it because he couldn't. Blacklock was blind, almost from birth because of the smallpox. And he waited for a friend to arrive who would be able to read it to him. And by sheer good luck, we understand that friend who arrived here at West Nicholson Street in Edinburgh is now a pub called the Blind Poet, named after Blacklock. That friend was a friend who would be a friend of Burns and a great help to Burns. And that man was Professor Dugald Stewart, the professor of philosophy at the University of Edinburgh. And we don't have the actual conversation, but we can surmise from what happened that Blacklock, the blind Blacklock, handed the book to Dugald Stewart here and said, Dugald, this, I understand, is a book of poems from somebody from your home county of Ayrshire. Pray read it to me and let us see if it has any merit or no. And the two of them opened the book. And of course, it was the Kilmarnock edition, and it began with the Twa Dugs. And probably 2 or 3 hours later, they stopped and looked at each other. And the future of the poet was then determined. He would come to Edinburgh. Meanwhile, back in Ayrshire, I'm going to pause in a moment or two to ask for questions and to gather breath. But before he left Ayrshire, of course, as you all know, there were troubles afoot for our poet. And I just love this image because this is by David Allen, who was Burns's own favorite poet of rural and domestic scenes of the time. This is David Allen's work called Penitentiary Presence, Presbyterian Penance. And what is being shown here is, this is not Burns top left, but this is another young farmer who is getting a rebuking from the pulpit by the minister for his incautious, improper, and ungovernable behavior towards the young lady who can be seen at the bottom of this image, weeping copiously in her shame. And because on her lap, fast asleep, is the innocent result of their improper union. And look at the far left here, bottom left. Here is the farmer's parents, mother and father, in absolute agony of remorse and shame that their son is being rebuked for the first of 3 occasions on a Sunday morning for his improper and incontinent behavior. And boys, you have to feel sorry for this guy. You have to, because not only is he catching it at point blank range from the minister, but his day's not over. if we tighten up, if we enlarge on the bottom of the image, here's her mother. Look at the body language here. He's not home yet. Very interestingly, thinking of the progeny of Burns, of which there were several, isn't it remarkable that this gentleman here, this is Lord Weir, former chairman of Weir Pumps in Glasgow, whom I met years and years ago in London when I was giving a talk about the Enlightenment, and he came to see me. He said, Dr. Purdy, I understand you're interested in Burns. And I said, yes, I am indeed, your lordship. He said, I am the direct descendant. I am not easily astonished, boys, but this member of the House of Lords telling me that he was, in fact, the only direct descendant of the poets living in Ayrshire, it took me utterly by surprise. And so I said, Lord Weir, you'll have to tell me, from which of the poet's children are you descended then? He said, I am the great, 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 great grandson of dear Bot Bess. He was descended from the last from Largy side, from Elizabeth Peyton, who was the first of the poet's children. And how wonderful I thought that the ghost of the poet must have a wry smile when he realized that the only direct descendant of his body, alive in Ayrshire at the time, was a member of the House of Lords. So we're arriving in Edinburgh, and I think I would pause there because the rest is another 7 or 8 minutes of it all. But any observations or questions, very happy to have them.
I was just thinking it was rather prescient in the schoolroom image that Burns was wearing a coat that appeared to be made of Mochlin ware. I'm sure that must have done them no harm.
Yeah.
David, Jim Shields here. That lovely painting which you commissioned of the Cruikshank girl playing the piano while Burns was, practicing.
Jim, sorry, Jim, it's not a piano.
No,
it's a harpsichord.
Yeah. No. She was playing. I couldn't help but notice that the paintings on the wall of the room where she was practicing seems to me somewhat autoerotic for such a young girl to be seeing.
They're from the classical tradition, Jim.
Yeah, from
remember that
the Sabines or something, David.
They go way back to the imperial era of Rome and the Republican era before that. And they're there, and they were put there deliberately by the artist, because if you remember Cruikshank, Willie Cruikshank, Burns' great friend, was the classics master of the High School of Edinburgh.
Of course, yep.
He was a colleague of Willie Nicol. The two of them taught Latin and Greek at the high school. So they reflect his academic activity. That's right.
Right, I understand that. Okay, thanks for that, David. David, but other wee question on that. The painting, where is it available for the public to see anywhere? Where is it located?
It's next door.
Oh, well.
Come and see me, James. It's in my sitting room right here.
Right, okay.
In the old house in Edinburgh. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, David.
In Newtown, yeah, sure.
The one that you had of James Boswell at the Assembly of the Kirk, you've got to admire the guy's barefacedness and appearing there when you look at his private life and his diaries while he was in Edinburgh and later in London. As
no stranger to a strumpet.
Absolutely, or two or three.
That's absolutely correct. There's one entry from Boswell's Edinburgh diaries, which I have here in my study. Spent the whole day at the Court of Session, thinking to myself also that I should become more retroussé and more reserved in my behavior and deportment. Yes. But on the way home, lay with two strumpets in the garden behind New Register House, and had to confess the same to my valuable spouse on arrival home.
She was a forgiving
What a
woman.
big character. Gee.
She was a forgiving woman because he confessed to her on numerous occasions. Dear, what a man.
That's right. Yeah.
And yet he was a brilliant biographer.
Indeed he was. Indeed he was. That's right. He was also a tremendous snob.
Absolutely.
In his papers, there was found the one letter to him from Burns, which was sent to his cousin, who was the factor of the Auchinleck estates. It was a beautiful letter in Burns's best hand, containing some of his poems, and requesting that his cousin, James Campbell, might effect an introduction to James Boswell for Burns. There was no introduction. And it was Boswell who did that, because not only was he a high Tory of the purest and bluest water, but he knew that Burns was a radical. And the other reason was, of course, that he was the laird of Auchinleck. He could ride for almost 10 miles on his own territory, whereas Burns was a tenant farmer at Mossgiel or someplace like that. And so he was beneath the Earl's unfortunate vision. And it's all the more sad in a sense because there's so many things connected them. They were both Ayrshire men. They belonged to the same Masonic lodge in Edinburgh. They were both enamored of the same woman, Williamina Alexander, the bonny lass of Ballochmyle, was admired enormously by Burns and by James Boswell. But they never met, and Boswell made absolutely sure about that. One of the main reasons, I think, physically, was that when Burns arrived on this day of ours, 27th November in Edinburgh, Boswell had just left with his valuable spouse and the kids to go to London, where he spent the rest of his life, apart from several forays back to Auchinleck. But when he came back to Ayrshire, as he did regularly, he never called into Dumfries to see Burns. Never once. They were parted by politics and by certain other reasons, as we've mentioned.
Interesting too that the painting of the inauguration of Burns as Scotland's Bard, Boswell appears in that painting, but of course it was impossible for him to appear because he was, as you said, in London.
That's right.
So
there's all sorts of spurious individuals in that particular age, right. Not least of all Francis Gross.
Yeah, it's just amazing to me that Diego Maradona is not on that painting.
Gross in the same build.
Okay, let's press on. I love this image too, but this is the tremendous activity in the grass market of Edinburgh, looking up to the castle at the top, boys. And on the left, at the western end of the grass market, is the old Corn Exchange, sadly demolished. But this is the grass market through which Burns would have ridden into Edinburgh on the 27th or so of November 1786, going eastbound through the grass market 34 years after his father had walked westbound through the grass market on his way to the West Bow and off to Ayrshire. And this is what Burns would have seen once he'd stabled the horse, checked into Mrs. Caffrey's house in the Lawn Market. This is a very, very useful image for any Burnsian, because this was engraved in December 1786. This is exactly what the poet would have seen when he looked from the old town of Edinburgh north towards the new town. Because you're now looking down to the Great Valley, which is now where the railway line is and Waverley Station is now. But you can see the remains of the North Loch there, which is in the process of being drained. On the right, you can see the North Bridge. And on the far side of the bridge over here, look at that. You can see the very first buildings of Princes Street beginning to rise. Princes Street beginning at the eastern end here and eventually moving west to Hanover Street and then to Frederick Street and eventually to Charlotte Square. And up at the top, you can see the Firth of Forth with shipping on it, and in the distance, the Lomans in the hills of Fife. So this is what the poet would have seen as he arrived, and was greeted he was so lucky with the greeting that he received in the city of Edinburgh. All over the literary world, you hear of young poets in various countries arriving in their capital city, hoping for a break. Burns didn't need to hope for the break was waiting for Burns. Burns had three hugely influential patrons waiting for him. The first was this man. This is James Cunningham, the Earl of Glencairn, and the owner of the great Glencairn estates in northern Ayrshire. The man who was a former army officer, a patron of the arts, and the man who took Burns literally under his wing to introduce him to Creech, who would become his publisher for the great second edition of the poems. And then, with this, as if that wasn't enough, he had the head. We've just seen the head of the aristocratic clique in Edinburgh. He also had this guy. This is the memorial to Dugald Stewart, professor of philosophy at the University of Edinburgh, who was also an Ayrshire man, who also took Burns under his wing with considerable results. And as if that wasn't enough, there was a third Ayrshire man waiting for him, none other than the Lord Provost of Edinburgh, James Hunter Blair of Blair Whan. So it was just Burns's great good fortune that three very powerful and supportive individuals were able to bring him into town, introduce him into society, and look forward to the publication of his new edition. So an unknown hand, says Burns in a letter, left 10 guineas for the Ayrshire Bard. 10 quid doesn't seem very much to us now. This was £10 sterling. That's roughly £900 in today's buying power. So the poet was able to re-kit himself out in his finery in Edinburgh. You see he's wearing boots here in this painting of him in Sybolt's library in Parliament Square, where he was first spotted, by the way, we know from one of his letters, by the far right at the bottom here, by the very young Walter Scott, who was then an apprentice in his father's law office in Edinburgh, and who was he haunted the library here, and remarks in one of his letters how delighted he was to see the famous Burns arrive in the library. And then there was the famous meeting. Scott was to meet Burns again and to converse with him for the first and only time. And this, boys, was a major find for us during the work on the encyclopedia. This is Sheen's house at the eastern end of the Meadows in Edinburgh. And this was the home of Professor... Sorry? This was the... Hello? Go ahead. This was the home of Professor Ferguson, who was a professor of moral philosophy before Dugald Stewart at the University of Edinburgh, who convened a meeting, or a conversazione as it was called, where a group of the literati of the time would gather in a house of an evening to greet somebody arriving in Edinburgh who would be of advantage to the cultural and intellectual life of the town. And you've all seen this before. This is the great painting by Charles Martin Hardy of Burns having his one and only conversation with the young Walter Scott. As I say, he was an apprentice in his father's law office in Edinburgh at the time. But this is very useful for all of us who lecture on the subject of the Enlightenment and 18th century Scotland, because some of the great stars of that constellation of stars are right here. On the right of the seated group, this is James Hutton, who began the whole science of systematic geology. Next to Hutton is Adam Smith, whose great work, The Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, is the foundation document of modern economics. Here is Dugald Stewart, whom we mentioned earlier, professor of philosophy. And on the left here, Professor Adam Ferguson, their host. And look, you see what he's doing? He's poking the fire, a necessary activity. It was the coldest house in Edinburgh. It was known to his family and friends as Kamchatka, after the great Siberian peninsula. And they were never to meet again, never to converse again, but the one meeting between our greatest novelist, Walter Scott, and our greatest poet here took place on that evening. And for a long time, we wondered exactly what was the date of it. And the purpose of the conversation between the two of them was some lines of poetry which appeared below this painting on the wall. The painting had 4 lines of poetry below it. Burns asked the company who was the author of these lines of poetry. Nobody knew except this young guy here, young Watty Scott, who said to Burns, "They are by Langhorne." And he was rewarded with a look and a glance and a few words of thanks from Burns, which he never forgot. And we know about this because 40 years later, Walter Scott was asked by his biographer, James Gibson Lockhart, John Gibson Lockhart, could Walter please recall his one meeting with Burns in Sheen's house here back in 1787? And it was as if it had been yesterday. It was as fresh in Walter Scott's mind as if it had been the day before. And he was able to give a wonderful description of Burns to Lockhart to appear in the biography. "I saw his eyes," said Scott. "I have never seen such eyes in a human head. Black, deep, like living coals of fire. I have never seen such in all my life, and I have seen some of the most famous men of my time." It's a great painting. The one empty chair, chaps, look here. There's one empty chair, and that is the chair for the greatest of them all of the Enlightenment, David Hume, the great philosopher who had died a few years previously. And we know about the date. It was the 10th of February, 1787, because we discovered in the National Library this letter of invitation by Professor Ferguson, the host, to General Fletcher Campbell, inviting him to come to the Conversazione to meet Burns. So we know the date to be the 10th of February, 1787. It was a Sunday evening. And here, another great occasion in town was where we see the poet's patron, is the Duchess of Gordon's evening here was Burns reading A Winter's Night. And behind the Duchess, who is reclining languidly on this chair here, is in his military uniform, is James Cunningham, the Earl of Glencairn, the poet's principal patron during his time in town. And it's interesting in terms of Dougal Stewart, whom we mentioned, the professor of philosophy, because in one of his letters, I discovered that he describes the walks which he took with Burns here on the Braid Hills outside Edinburgh, looking down to the town and over to Arthur's Seat and Salisbury Crags, you see there in the middle distance, and away across to Fife beyond that, where Dougal Stewart says that he was astonished to know that Burns was fully aware of the concept of the association of ideas. Now, that is one of the central philosophical discoveries of David Hume. And I had no idea until I read this and then went back to, because I'm an author with others on the subject of David Hume, that Burns had read Hume and clearly understood the basic tenets of his philosophy. So good for Stewart, and good for him for taking Burns on these walks and understanding for us now just how deep the poet's mind was. Because Dougal Stewart did not suffer fools at all, let alone badly. And that the fact that this man, this professor of philosophy, was interested in the abstract debates he had with Burns says a lot about the poet's depth of mind. And here is David Hume himself in Sandy Stoddart's great sculpture in Edinburgh with the kirk in the background. And this, I used this recently in a lecture where we were talking about David Hume's skepticism about the kirk, because the kirk in the background here was David Hume's target. He never denied the existence of God, our great philosopher, but he was not entirely persuaded about the miracles. And there's a wonderful folk memory in Edinburgh to this day of David Hume having a discussion with his friend, Hugh Blair, the minister of St. Giles and professor of rhetoric at the university. And David Hume saying to Hugh Blair, Hughie, if you insist, and you do, that the founder of your religion had a mother who was a virgin and a father who was a ghost, albeit a holy one, and if you continue to aver, as you do, that this admittedly unusual parentage was revealed exclusively to his mum by an archangel, Hughie, are we not entitled to inquire if this is likely? And Hugh Blair said, David, stop it. Stop it right now. But it's good to know. It's good to know that our greatest poet was a student, just by reading of our great philosopher here. And this was mentioned earlier. Write it off. This is the accolade is very important here because he was known as the Ayrshire Bard until this moment, because this was the very first time in the Lodge Canongate co-winning #2, of which Cami is a member, and some of us also have been guests. This was the first time that he was saluted as the national bard, and Burns never forgot it and was extremely grateful to Lord Charters here, or if it was he, the Right Worshipful Master, who saluted him as Caledonia's bard. In other words, for the very first time, he was being recognized as the country's great poet. This is the office of, this is an excellent image of the High Street as Burns would have known it in Edinburgh. You see the Market Cross on the left, St. Giles in the background, and this extraordinary building, the Luckenbooth building right here. And this is the stair going up to Creech's office, William Creech, who would publish the great second edition of the poet's poems. Rowan Creech, and this painting by Rayburn hangs in the debating hall of the Speculative Society in Edinburgh. And this is the building, sadly gone now. This is the building in which the great second edition was published. This is William Smelly's printing house in Edinburgh, just off the High Street, demolished in 1859, sadly. But up these steps went Burns to superintend the publication of the great second edition of the poems, the Edinburgh edition, with 1,500 subscribers, which would establish his literary reputation for all time. I love this image. This is the great character, great friend of Burns, William Smelly of the Crocallan Fencibles, great character indeed as well. And here's the frontispiece, as you've all seen, of the poet with the image by his friend Naismith adorning the frontispiece here. And I think also that one should always remember that he was regarded as a poet by other poets. This is John Keats, England's great star of the early Romantic period, who came up to Burns Cottage in 1806 and paid tribute to the inspiration he had from Burns. And if you want to know if a poet's any good, don't ask his own people, don't ask his fellow countrymen, go abroad, wait a generation after his death, and then ask the great poets of that other country what they make of him. And that criteria, Burns passes the test from Keats. And not just Keats. Another of his great admirers was another great star of the English Enlightenment. This is William Wordsworth. And if you visit Wordsworth's home at Rydal Mount here in the Lake District, you'll be shown the dining room in the old house, which is exactly as it was, the curator told me, as it was when Wordsworth died in 1850. And if you look above the fireplace, you will see another encomium of Burns, another tribute, far more eloquent than anything that could be written. In pride of place, above the fireplace, Wordsworth had his copy of the Naismith portrait of Burns himself. The one that was painted in Edinburgh, bequeathed to all of us by his son. This is you've all seen this in the National Portrait Gallery. Doesn't quite show correctly the buff and the blue of the waistcoat, which had, I'll show you one a little later of the real colors of the waistcoat, which showed his political affiliations. But we owe a lot to this guy. This is one of the two soldiers, sons of the poet. This is James Glencairn Burns. Correction, this is William Nichol Burns, Colonel William Nichol Burns of the Indian Army. And when his will was read in 1871, it was found that he had bequeathed the Naismith portrait of his father to the National Gallery of Scotland in Edinburgh, with the request that it become, just like my father's poems and songs themselves, become the property of the people of Scotland forever. Good for him. And then down in the Canongate, we have this, the great gravestone over of Robert Ferguson, with just one verse of the 3 verses I've always wondered about this. We've had discussions here in Edinburgh about that. No sculptured marble here, nor pompous lay, no storied urn or animated bust, no, this simple stone directs pale Scotia's way to pour her sorrows and her poet's dust. And if you look at the gravestone here, you'll see that that's at the top. The rest of the gravestone is blank. And I've always wondered, and others have wondered, if it was meant to have the other two verses of the poem on the gravestone, but perhaps there was not enough finance to cover it. And some years ago, the Edinburgh Burns Club, Cammy and others involved, we restored the grave of Robert Ferguson, which had fallen into a degree of disrepair. It was also a matter of concern to Robert Louis Stevenson, who offered all the way from Samoa to repair it as a present from one Edinburgh lad to another. And this is the famous bill which Burns settled when he wrote to his friend Peter Hill, saying, "Peter, I enclose the money due to Robert Burn, singular, the architect who put up the stone over Ferguson. He was 2 years in putting it up after I commissioned him. So I have been 2 years in paying him. And he and I are quits. And what's more," he said, when Robert Burn, when he reflects that the money was due from a poet for setting a stone over another poet, he may with grateful surprise thank heaven that he ever saw a penny of it. And then many years later, we were able to unveil this. And this was one of the most enjoyable days I ever had in Edinburgh. I was the latter chairman, chairman, which raised the money for the statue of Robert Ferguson outside the Canongate Kirk here. And it's your humble servant on the right. And then my friend Will Bissett, the president of the St. Andrew Society of New York in America, Robert Ferguson, and then on the left, George Grubb, Lord Provost of Edinburgh, a great admirer of Ferguson. And we had this wonderful occasion where we finally consigned the statue to the citizens. It's become one of the most visited sites in the city, looking down as it does towards the Parliament at Holyrood. Traveling around Scotland, I was going to I want to mention this to you because I get seriously irritated regularly by being told that Burns was impoverished, that he was penurious, that he was an extremely poor man. When he set off, as you guys all know, for his tours around Scotland with Willie Nicol, he set off in this. This is a chaise and pair. They had two horses pulling the chaise, John Carnegie, their driver, Nicol and Burns in the cabin with luggage on top and behind. And because, as you all know, in the 18th century, if you were penurious, if you were impoverished, you did not travel in one of these. If you were going somewhere in the 18th century, you walked. This is the equivalent of a Bentley Landaulet coupe. And round Scotland they went, collecting songs, collecting stories, writing sometimes on the window, as Burns did in Stirling, and then had to smash it later. Burns was devoted sometimes to writing things on windows, which perhaps were a little incautious politically, and he had to come back to Stirling and fix that window, meeting his great friend on that tour. Hello?
Can hear you, David.
Lady's voice, yeah. This is Neil Gow, the great fiddler and composer, who came all the way from Perth, from a gig in Perth, to meet Burns at Inver, his hometown. And there's a story which I've never been able to authenticate, but I think it's wonderful, that Burns said, "Mr. Gow, I am very pleased to see you. Thank you for coming all the way from Perth, a long way." Gow, who had been celebrating greatly after the gig, said, "Aye, it wasn't the length of the road, Burns, for Perth. It was the width of it." And we've always wondered about this on his travels. Is this Burns, or is it not? This is by James Stoddart, R.A., and is allegedly Burns with his violin listening to this lady who is singing a folk song, and he's taking it down or catching the tune on the violin. And you'll see that between the two of them on the stand is some note paper. And this is musical note paper. We've always wondered how Burns managed to keep in his head all these songs that he heard on his travels around Scotland. And this may well have been the way of it, that he had his violin with him, we know. He was never a violinist and a performing violinist, but he could hold a tune on the violin. I think he got that tune into his head, put it down in notation, and then later back in Edinburgh, helped by Jenny Cruikshank, he would be able to write it down. I'm going to come to the end very shortly and then just ask for questions. But some of the great songs come from this time. The King Robert's March to Bannockburn, which in my view, and it's a personal view, is what we should sing at Bannockburn, not Flower of Scotland, which is a lovely tune, but is a dirge, a lament. We must be the only people on earth, boys, to sing the lament before the battle. And here is the king, of course, at Bannockburn. And I wanted to end with this. This is the sailing of the slave ship, because we're going to have trouble in January because of what happened recently to David Hume, whose name was taken off a tower at my own University of Edinburgh, because he was alleged to have said something possibly supportive of the slave trade. He had nothing to do with the slave trade, but such is the tenor of the times that you've got to be very careful. Now, many artists of the time lent their art to the anti-slavery movement. This is a Turner. This is J.M.W. Turner, England's great artist. And this is his contribution to the anti-slavery movement. It's called The Sailing of the Slave Ship. Burns was in there too. Burns contributed also. His great song, The Slave's Lament, is his contribution to the anti-slavery movement. And it should be never forgotten, and it will be forgotten by people who attack him, and they will in January, for possibly being minded to go to the West Indies to a slavish state. We should never forget that Burns's greatest admirer in the United States was the man who freed the slaves. And every night that he spent in the White House, Abraham Lincoln had on the bedside table a copy of the Holy Book and a copy of the collected works of Burns. And he was not the only president to admire our poet. He was also admired by a man who was a president in a completely different sense. In 1960, this happened. This is Burns Cottage in 1960. And the man holding the spinning wheel and posing for the photograph in front of the image of Burns in the background is not Muhammad Ali. This is Cassius Clay. And I can still remember being a schoolboy at Ayr Academy, and my father, who was president of the Scottish Aviation Burns Club, coming home and saying that the light heavyweight champion of the Olympics, Cassius Clay, had been in Prestwick, where his aircraft was being refueled before traveling back to the US, and had insisted on going to Burns Cottage. And in Burns Cottage, to the amazement of the curator, he had recited part of Slave's Lament by Burns. And when the curator expressed his delight and astonishment that Cassius knew the poem or the song, Cassius said that he knew perfectly well who had been active in the anti-slavery movement, and that his own great-grandfather had been a slave. And also it's worth remembering that not just Cassius, but another president too was an admirer. And among the list of subscribers for the Edinburgh edition in Alexandria, Virginia, was this officer of the American Army. And this is the man from Mount Vernon, George Washington himself, the first president of the United States, and an admirer of the poet. I'm going to leave it there. I've gone on long enough, and you've seen quite enough of the images to last us for long enough. So gentlemen, may I just thank you for your attention, and very happy to take any observations and questions.
Thank you, David.
I think that was absolutely marvelous. Wonderful selection of images which conveyed vividly the incredible life and the people that Burns met. I think it was absolutely wonderful, David. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Here, here.
echo that too, David. That was wonderful, absolutely wonderful.
Exceptional.
A wee question, David. That painting of him at Kamchatka and Ferguson is poking the fire. He, I believe, started a club in Edinburgh called the Poker Club.
Oh, yes.
And the Poker Club was a political club, and it was to stir up the issue of the Scots being able to form voluntary arms again,
Yes.
following the drive. Do you think that's what was meant by doing that in that particular painting?
I think he had both ideas in mind there, because you're dead right. The Poker Club has met in Stamp Office Close, just off the High Street. It was to do with poking the fire or poking the government, just as you said correctly, to allow a Scottish militia to be reformed, because the Disarming Act had come in after Culloden and was still in force. But also poking the fire was absolutely essential because of the sub-zero temperatures in the house. But well done, well spotted. He was in fact one of the founders of the Poker Club, and it lasted a very considerable period of time and was successful, by the way. The government did repeal the Disarming Act, and the militias were allowed to reform and our young men to join the army. Yep.
Great stuff.
One thing also about that image of the Sheen's house and James and Adam Ferguson's house, that image I showed you is not conjectural. That image is what is eyewitness, because Charles Martin Hardy, the artist, made it his business to find young James, the son of the house, James Ferguson, who was 10 years old at the time of that meeting. And he interviewed him, and James, like young Walter Scott, remembered exactly who had been there on that evening. So you may be assured that what you have seen this evening in that painting is accurate. The original of the painting, by the way, interestingly, is in Dunedin, in the South Island of New Zealand. And there's a copy at Abbotsford, of course, because of Walter Scott, and several copies around Edinburgh and elsewhere.
Great stuff. Well, thank you very much again, David. Wonderful. I think we ought to have another song. Doogie, would you like to give us a song?
Sorry, gentlemen. It took me a while to find the unmute button. Yes, I can certainly give you a song. That was very, very inspiring indeed. David, thank you very much. Being a young gentleman myself, I find it very, very interesting to listen to the history of the Bard. It's something that really inspires me indeed. To the fact that I'm friends with Cammy, of course. I've got to keep up with him. There we go. I'd like to sing a wee song, actually, that I actually forgot about it. I did a recording of this a few years back while I was still serving in the military. And it's a piece of music called I Walk in O, which I believe was adapted by Burns on one of his travels around Scotland. More recently, it was probably re-recorded by Eddie Reader, the Scottish singer. So I'd like to play this for you. And I haven't played my guitar in a while, so bear with me. I hope it sounds okay over the camera. Summer's a pleasant time, flowers of every colour, water runs o'er the yew, and I long for my true lover. I walk in till I may reach sleep I can't get me, for thinking of my dearie. I walk and go. When I sleep I dream, when I wake I'm weary. Sleep I can't get near, for thinking of my dearie. I walk and go, walking still and weary. Sleep in me, thinking of my dearie. I walk and go. Lonely night comes on, and the labour sleeping. Think on my bonny lad, and blur my eyes weeping. I walk and go, walking still and weary. Sleep I can't make, for thinking of my dearie. I walk and go, walking still and weary. Sleep I can't make, for thinking of my dearie. I walk and go. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
I think there's a bit of a problem when you're mute. Zoom seems to sort of duck down the volume when it thinks that you're getting a wee bit too loud, and obviously you're...
Why can I still hear you then?
Good job, though. Good job.
I could come back for the next one over here somewhere.
I'm enjoying your gallery behind you as well. You've obviously been very
busy
since the last I was round.
Well, these are the ones that I can't sell, you see. So they've got on my wall. Well, that's
good stuff.
This is for Jim Hutchin. There you are.
Oh, good, good. Will, you get something for us?
Oh, same old, same old. There'll be no introduction required. Epistle to Davy, a brother poet. While the winds fae off Ben Lomond blaw, and bar the door wi' drive and snow and hing us o'er the ingle, I set me doon to pass the time and spin a verse or twa o' rhyme in hamely Westland jingle. While frosty winds blaw in the drift, bend to the chimley lug, I grudge a wee the great folks' gift that lives sae bean and snug. I tent less and want less their roomy fireside, but hanker and canker to see their cursed pride. It's hardly in a body's power to keep at times for being sour to see who things are shared, who best o' chills or whiles and want, while coofs on countless thousands rant, and kenna who to weird. But, Davy lad, ne'er fash your heed, though we little gear. We're fit to win our daily breed. Slangs were hail and fear, ne'er spearna, nor fearna. Old age, ne'er mind a feg. The last o't, the worst o't, is only but to beg. To lie in kilns and barns at e'en when banes are crazed and blood is seen is doubtless great distress. Yet then, content could mak us blessed. Even then, sometimes, we'd snatch a taste o' truest happiness. The honest heart that's free fae all intended fraud or guile. Whoever fortune kick the ball, has I some cause to smile. And mine still, you'll find still, a comfort this, nae small. Nae mair then, we'll care then, nae further can we fa. What though, like, commoners of air? We wander out, we know not where, but either house or hold. Yet nature's charms, the hills and woods, the sweeping vales and foaming floods are free alike to awe. In days when daisies deck the ground and blackbirds whistle clear, with honest joy our hearts will bound to see the coming year. On braes, when we please then, we'll sit in south a tune. Sign rhyme tilt, we'll time tilt and sink when we head in. It's no in titles, nor in rank. It's no in wealth like linen bank to purchase peace and rest. It's no in making muckle, mair, it's no in books, it's no in lair to mak us truly blessed. If happiness hain not our seat and centre in the breast, we may be wise, or rich, or great, but never can be blessed. Nae treasures nor pleasures could mak us happy lying. The hurt eyes, the pert, aye, that maks us richt or wrang. Think ye that, sick as you and I, wha drudge and drive through wheat and dry with never ceasing toil? Think ye, are we less blessed than they wha scarcely tend us in their ways, hardly worth their while? Alas, how often, haughty mood, God's creatures they oppress, or else, neglecting all that's good, they riot in excess, baith careless and fearless of either heaven or hell, esteeming and deeming it's all an idle tale. Then let us cheerful acquiesce, nor make our scanty pleasures less by pining at our state. And even should misfortunes come, I hear wha sit hae met with some and is thankful for them yet. They gie the wit o' age to youth, they let us ken oursel, they mak us see the naked truth, the real good and ill. Though losses and crosses be lessons richt severe, there's wit there, you'll get there, you'll find nae other where. But tent me, Davy, ace o' hearts, to say och less would wrang the carts, and flattery I detest. This life is joys for you and I, and joys that riches ne'er could buy, and joys the very best. There's all the pleasure of the heart, the lover and the friend. Ye hae your Meg, your dearest pert, and I, my darling Jean. It warms me, it charms me to mention but her name. It heats me, it beats me and sets me all on flame. Oh, all ye powers who rule above, O thou whose very self art love, thou knowest my word sincere. The life-blood streaming through my heart, or my more dear immortal part, is not more fondly dear. When heart-corroding care and grief deprive my soul of rest, her, dear, aye dear, brings relief and solace to my breast. Thou being all-seeing, oh hear my fervent prayer, still take her and make her thy most peculiar care. All hail, ye tender feelings dear, the smile of love, the friendly tear, the sympathetic glow. Long since this world's thorny ways had numbered out my weary days, hadst not been for you. Fate still has blessed me with a friend in every care and ill, and oft a more endearing band, a tie more tender still. it lichtens, it brightens the teneberific scene to meet with and greet with my Davy or my Jean. Oh, how that name inspires my style. The words come skelping rank and file, almost afore I ken. The ready measure runs as fine as Phoebus and the famous nine were glowering o'er my pen. My spivet Pegasus will limp till Yancey's fairly het, then he'll hilch and stilch and jump and run and unco fit. But least then, the beast then should rue this hasty ride. I'll licht now and dicht now her sweaty, wizened hide. Thank you.
Brilliant, Willie.
Thank you.
Class, my friend.
Cheers.
Outstanding. Fabulous. I'm wondering, does anyone need a short break before we kind of move on? Because I've been hitting it a little bit hard, you know.
That mean you're leaving in?
I'm just wanting to check. You know, I'm okay. You know, I've got a bladder of steel, but you know, I need to check. You know, when I've got a crowd of a certain age. You know.
One down.
Well, listen, if you do need to get up and sort of, you know, water the plants, then feel free at any stage. But to move on, Jim, have you got a song for us? Jim Shields, I've muted you, but hold on a minute. You're muted just at the moment. I don't. Can you see where your mute button is down at the bottom there, Jim?
Yeah,
that's you now.
Oh, okay.
Probably on the
Well,
bottom left.
good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm frequently asked at the many events that we'll go to, Jim, what is your favourite Burns song? And I find that a very hard thing to answer due to the fact there are just so many beautiful songs. So what I've done for this first thing is actually just string some lines together into a medley of some Burns songs. It only lasts 28 minutes, so it won't be too long, don't worry. I just think I'd like to put together some of my favourites, and certainly within the category of his songs, these are some of the love songs which I put into a medley. So here we go, Cammy. Bang some braes o bonny Doon, how can ye bloom sae fresh and fair? How can ye chant, ye little birds, and I sae weary full o' care? Thou break my heart, thou warbling bird, that wanders through yon flowery thorn. Ye mind me, oh, departed joy, departed never to return. O Mary, at thy window be, it is the wish that tries to do. Those smiles and glances let me see, that mark the miser's treasure poor. How blithely would I bide the stour, a weary slave frae sun to sun. Could I the rich reward secure, the lovely Mary Morrison? Flow gently, sweet Afton, among thy green braes. Flow gently, I'll sing thee a song in thy praise. My Mary's asleep, by yon murmuring stream. Flow gently, sweet Afton, disturb not her dream. Thou stock dove whose echo resounds through the glen, ye wild whistling blackbirds in yon thorny den. Thou green-crested lapwing, thy screaming forbear. I charge you, disturb not my slumbering fair. Of all the earths the wind can blow, I dearly lue the west. But there the bonny lassie lives, the lassie I lue best. There cold winds blow and rivers row, and many a hill between. Baith day and night my fancy's flecked is ever wi' my Jean. A fond kiss and then we sever. A farewell, alas, forever. Deep in heart-wrung tears I'll pledge thee. Warring sighs and groans I'll wage thee. Had we never loved, say kindly, had we never loved, say blindly, never met or never parted, we should ne'er be broken hearted. Thank you, gentlemen.
Excellent, Jim. Excellent.
Fantastic.
Again, it's a similar sort of problem there. It's a really weird thing there. I think it just, Zoom must hear a bit of feedback coming from your speakers, and it just kind of like ducks down the volume a little bit. But I'm sure our pleasure wasn't diminished at all. Thanks for that. Of course, it means that nobody else can sing now because you've sung them all.
327 mere Cami.
Gordon, would you care to give us your pleasure? Now, Gordon, you're muted at the moment.
A bit.
That's it.
I'll give you the address to Uncle Gid. O ye, we are so good yourself, sae pious and sae holy. You've noch today but mark and tell your neighbours' thoughts and folly. But life is like a wheel-gone mill, supplied with store of water. The heapit happers ebb and still the clap plays clatter. Hear me, ye venerable core, as counsel for poor mortals, that frequent pass does wisdom's door, for glaikit for his portals. Aye, for their thoughtless, careless sakes, would here propone defences, their doncy tricks, their black mistakes, their failings and mischances. You see, you state with theirs compared and shudder at the niffer, but cast a moment's fair regard what makes the mighty differ. Discount what Scanto gave and gave, the purity you pride in, and what's off more than all the leave, you're better at or hiding. Think, when your castigated pulse gives new and then a wallop, what raging must his veins convulse that still eternal gallop. With wind and tide to all your tail, richt on your scud your seaway, but in the teeth they'll baith to sail. it marks an unkilleely. See social life and glee set doon, all joyous and unthinking, till quite transmugrified they've grown, debauchery and drinking. Or would they stay to calculate the eternal consequences of your more dreaded hell to state, damnation of expenses? Ye high exalted virtuous dame, tied up in godly laces, afore ye gave pre-frailty names, suppose a change of cases, a dear lewd lad convenience snug, a treacherous inclination, but let me whisper your lug, your ailments, nae temptation, then gently scan your brother man. Still gentler sister woman, though they may gan a canyon wrong, to step aside is human. One point must still be greatly dark, the moving why they do it, and just as lamely can you mark how far perhaps they rue it. Who made the heart is he alone, decidedly can try us. He knows each chord its various tones, each spring its various bias. That at the balance let's be mute, we never can adjust it. What's done, we partly may compute, but know not what's resisted.
Well done, Gordon. Champion.
Very good.
Outstanding. Thanks so much. Willie, I wonder, Alex approached me about doing the Twa Dugs. I was wondering maybe if we could prevail on you to do the introduction and the outgoing. We haven't discussed this, of course, so if you're not up for it, it doesn't matter, but...
I'll do that, no problem.
Grand.
Are you ready to go?
Aye, why no?
It was in that place of Scotland's Isle that bears the name of Old King Kyle. On a bonny day in June, when wearing through the afternoon, twa dugs that weren't thrang at hame, forgether once upon a time. The first I'll name, they called him Caesar, was keep it for his honour's pleasure. His hair, his size, his mouth, his lugs, showed he was nae no Scotland's dugs, but whalp at some place, far abroad, where sailors gang to fish for cod. His looked, lettered, braw brass collar showed him the gentleman and scholar. But though he was o' high degree, the faint o' pride, nae pride had he, but what he spent an hour caressing, even wi' a tinkler gypsy's messing. At kirk or market, mill or smiddy, nae dotted tight though, Ayrshire diddy, but he would stand as glad to see him and strunt on stains and hillocks wi' him. The t'other was a ploughman's collie, a rhyming, ranting, raving bully, wha for his friend and comrade had him, and his freaks had luath got him after some dug and healing sang. He was made lang syne, Lord kens who lang. He was a gash and faith the tyke as ever lap a shach or dyke. His honest, sonsy, bossant face, I got him friends in ilka place. His breast was white, his doozy back, weel clad wi' coat o' glossy black. His gauzy tail wi' upward curl hung o'er his hurdies wi' a swirl. They do but they were fain weather, and Uncle Park and thick together, with social nose while snuffed and snowket, while mice and mowdy worts they howket, while scoured the wa and lang excursion, and one the other in diversion, till, tired at last with mony a farce, they set them down upon their arse, and there began a lang digression about the lords of the creation.
I've often wondered, honest Lewis, what sort of life pair dugs let you have? And when the gentry's life I saw, what way pair buddies lived awa? Your laird gets in his racket rents, his coal, his cane and all his stents. He rises as he likes his sail. He's flunkies answer at the bell. He calls his coach. He calls his horse. He draws a bonny silken purse as lang's my tail. Or through the steeks the yellow letter Geordie keeks. Fae morn to e'en it's nocht, but toiling at baking, roasting, frying, boiling, and if the gentry first are steking, yet e'en the haw folk fill their pecking with sauce, ragouts, and sick like trashtray. It's little short of doonricht wastry. Oor whipper in, we blast at winner. Peer worthless elf, it eats a dinner better than ony tenant man our lordship has in all the land, and what peer cop folk put their painch in. I own, it's past my comprehension.
Trow, Caesar, well, they're fast enough. A caught her houking in a shuch, with dirty stains, big in a dyke, bearing a quarry or sick like himself, his wife, he thus sustains a smite through all wee dirty wains, and nought but his hung bard to keep them right and tight and thack and rape. And when they meet with sair disasters like loss of health or want of masters, you mayst would think a wee touch langer and they must one starve with cold and hunger. But how it comes, I never ken, yes, yet they're mostly wonderful contented, and burly cheels and clever hisses are bred and sick away as this is.
But then, to see how you're neglect it, how huffed and cuffed and disrespect it, Lordman, our gentry care is little for delvers, ditchers, and sick kettle. The gang is so say by peer folk, as I wad be a stinking broke. I've noticed on our laird's court day, and mony's a time my heart's been way. Peer tenant buddies, scant o' cash, how they maun throw the factor snashel, stamp and threaten, curse and swear, apprehend and pin their gear while they maun stone with aspect hummel and hear on fear and tremble. I see how folk live that he riches, but surely peer folk won't be wretches.
Well, they're no as wretches, aid one think. They're constantly on poor truth's brink. They're so accustomed with the sight, the view it gives them little fright. Then chance and fortune are so guided that I are less or mere provided. The dearest are no fatigued with close employment, and sweet rest is dear enjoyment. The sweetest comfort o' their lives, their gushy wains and faithful wives. The prattling things are just their pride that sweetens a their fireside. And whilst 12 penny worth of nappy can make the buddies unca happy, they lay aside their private cares to mind the kirk and state affairs. They'll talk of patronage and priests with kindling fury in their breasts, but fairly what's new coming, tell what tales in London, tell what new taxation's coming, or fairly at the folk in London. As bleak-faced Hallowmas returns, they get the jovial ranting curns when rural life with every station unite in common recreation. Love blinks, wit slaps, and social mirth forgets there's care upon the earth. That merry day the year begins, they bar the door with frosty winds, The nappy reeks with mantling stream and spreads a heart-inspiring steam. The lantern pipe and sneeshing mill is handed round with recht good will. The canty old folk cracking crews, the young'uns ranting through the house. My heart has been so fond to see them, that I for joy hae barked with them. Still, it's our true what ye hae said. Sick game is now our often played. There's mony a creditable stock of decent, honest fossing folk, a riven out both root and branch, some rascals prideful greed to quench, who aims to knit himself the master in favour with some gentle master, where Abelins thrang a parliamentin, for Britain's good, his sole intentin.
Hey, lad, you little ken about it. For Britain's good. Good faith, I doot it. Say, Raider gone as Premier leads them and saying aye or no as he bids them at operas and plays, parading, mortgaging, gambling, masquerading, or maybe in a frolic daft to Hager, Cali takes a waft to take a tour and make a whirl to learn bon ton and see the world. There at Vienna or Versailles, he'll reeve his father of olden tales, or by Madrid he takes the route to thrum guitars and fecht without. Then down Italian vista startles, hoor hunting, mang the groves of myrtles, then bowsies drumly German water to make him still look fair and fatter and purge the consequential sorrows, love gifts for carnival signoras. For Britain's good, for our destruction, with dissipation, feud and faction.
Oh, hey, man, dear sirs, is that the gate that wastes the money abroad state? Are we so fochten and harassed for gear to gang that gate at last? Oh, would they stay back frae courts and please themselves on country sports? It would for every ane be better, the laird, the tenant and the cotter. For they frank, rant and rambling billies, faint tales of them ill-hearted fellows, except for breaking o' their timber or speaking lightly o' their limmer, the shooting o' a hare or moorcock, the ne'er a bit their ilt of poor folk. But will you tell me, Master Caesar, sure great folks' lives a life of pleasure, they called their hunger ere can steer them, the very thought o't needna fear them.
Lordman, were ye but whiles where I am, the gentles, you would ne'er envy them. It's true, they needna starve nor sweat through winter's cold or summer's heat. They've nae sair work to craze their banes and fill old age with grips and grains. But human bodies are sick fools for all the colleges and schools that when nae real ills perplex them, they make a nucht or sell to vex them, and aye the less they hate to stop them, in like proportion, less'll hurt them. The gentlemen and ladies worst, we even doing want to work are cursed, they loiter, lounging, lank and lazy, though deal he ails them, yet uneasy, their days insipid, dull and tasteless, their nights unquiet, lang and restless, needing their sports, their balls and races, their galloping through the public places, their sick parades, sick pomp and art. The joy can scarcely reach the heart. The men cast out in party matches and sow their awe in deep debauches. Aye, nicht, they're mad with drink and hooring. Nie stay their lives are past enduring. The ladies, arm in arm in clusters, as great and gracious o' as sisters, but here they're absent thoughts at other. They're all run deals and jades together, and o'er the wee bit cup and platy they sip the scandal potion pretty, or lee lang nichts with crabbit lukes, poor o'er the devil's picture books, staking a chance of farmer's stackyard and lie like only unhanged blackguard. There's some exceptions, man and woman, but this is gentry's life in common.
By this, the sun was out o' sicht, and darker gloamin' broch the night. The bumclock hummed with lazy drone. The kye stood routing i' the lone. When up they got and shook their lugs, rejoiced. They werena men but dugs, and each took off his several way, resolved to meet some other day.
Thank you.
Well done, guys. Well done.
Thanks, Will.
Bravo.
Outstanding. Oh,
Good.
well, a lot of fun that. Jimmy Law,
Was that,
what
was,
you
that,
got for us?
was that not a poem of tremendous courage? Not just physical courage, but social courage.
Social
Put
insight.
that in the very first poem of the
Yes.
Kilmarnock edition,
Yes.
knowing it was going to be read by the entire Caledonian hunt, the
Yes.
gentry and the aristocracy. Bravo.
Definitely a shout. Shot across the bows, no doubt about it.
Tremendous, boys. Well done. Well done, everyone. And I must thank you for your immortal memory. the new pictures, the images. I don't know how long you've had these images, how long it took you to collate them.
Over 25 years now, and counting. Yeah, but remember again that they're not mine; they're yours, and they're all available on from the National Archive.
Right.
And not only are they physical and factual and historical, but they're also humorous as well, because any talk about Burns or anybody else, in fact, benefits a lot from having a dash of humor put into it as well. I was just thinking of Jim talking about Jim giving us the great poem, or rather the song of meeting, Mary Morrison. And I still remember my Uncle David, soldier, prisoner of the Japanese, coming home, and many years later telling me, Davy, said, you'll learn about Burns one day, and I better tell you about Mary Morrison. Great song. But she wasn't a Mary Morrison. I said, no, Uncle David, no. It was written for Burns's girlfriend of the time, but she wasn't a Mary Morrison. She became Mary Morrison because of that beautiful name. I said, really? So what was her name? Her name was Ellison Begbie, and not even a poet of Burns's lambent genius could do anything with it.
Brilliant. Very good.
In all the discussions about the poet's genius in terms of his literature and his grasp of the world about us, there's the humor as well. We must never forget that, boys.
I was interested particularly, well, not especially, but in an instance, Bruce's march to Bannockburn. Angus Middleton and I are doing a debate with the new Cumnock boys on Sunday. Our slant on it is Scotland needs a new national anthem. Now, we don't have a national anthem, so why would we need a new national anthem? During the Empire Games, it was Scotland, it was Scots were hey. When the Commonwealth Games took over, it was Scotland the Brave. And then in 2010, Flower of Scotland was the song chosen by the masses, and it is still the most popular one. Just maybe a show of hands, or what's everyone's take on that? My particular view is the song has not been written yet. So we'll get some singers here. Perhaps you could put pen to paper and give us a new national anthem.
There's a challenge.
My favourite choice for what it counts, Jimmy, would be the Freedom Come O Ye. I think that's a cracking song for Scotland.
Yes.
Wonderful song.
But would people understand it?
No. No 1 in 10.
Which of the Scots players would actually sing it? So, yeah.
I think I mentioned earlier that I was at Paris almost 20 years ago when Flower of Scotland was sung for the first time in Paris. And I was there with my colleague Jean-Pierre Vouzoin, who is a consultant physician at the Salpêtrière, the great general hospital, the equivalent of Edinburgh Royal in Paris. And he said, I am so interested to read in the paper yesterday that you have a new national anthem. Excellent. And I said, yeah, well, I hope you'll enjoy it. And on the pitch before the game between France and Scotland that day, the French gendarmerie band, 60 strong, on the pitch, played Flower of Scotland for the first time.
Right.
They did it deliberately at half speed.
Exactly.
On and on and on, and eventually it ended. Whereupon Jean-Pierre said to me, David, very interesting, your new national anthem. May I be permitted an observation? And I said, yes, go ahead. And I knew what was coming. And he said, you must be the only people on earth to play the lament before the battle.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
And my personal view is we don't need a new national anthem. We've got one. Our greatest poet produced a great song, and it's not Scots Wha Hae, It is King Robert's March, which is popularly known as Scots Way, but that's just the first 3 words of the first line. It's King Robert's March to Bannockburn, our greatest poet writing about our greatest king and our greatest victory over our dear neighbours to the south. There they are, boys, up and at 'em. What more do we need?
Right, okay, that's a good point. We were on a train from Saint-Emilion down to Bordeaux one day, and we joined a train at Saint-Emilion. There was 8 young Frenchmen heading to a rugby game at Toulouse. I don't know if they were there to lose or to win, but But when they heard we were Scottish, the 8 of them in perfect English, perfect Scots, sang "Flower of Scotland." So it's well known throughout the world, even for
Other than by the gendarmerie.
well,
That was deliberate, though. That was intended before the match, that they played it slowly before we came out. And if I remember correctly, we beat them.
Yes, we did. We did. We
That
won.
was the first thing we played. It was the last match in the Parc de France, and the pipe band of Edinburgh City Police, or Lothian and Borders, was there. And at the end, they went round the pitch playing the Scots tunes. It was marvellous.
well,
Yeah.
my son-in-law was in a pub. They stay in France. Was in a pub in the town where they lived. And after the game, when, as you say, Scotland won, he stood up and shouted, "Nous sommes les champignons." we are the mushrooms.
Exactly.
Must have been a fun guy.
Oh! So right, I'll give you many years ago, when I started the Burns Club in Skelmerley, a guy, Joe Kennedy, came with a load of his cronies. Phil Todd was there, Charlie McGorrin, who did the parody Tam the Bunnet, and also Sanny Drain. Now, all I had ever heard in my life was Tam O'Shanter and Holy Willie's Prayer, and the odd To a Moose, To a Mouse. But anyway, Sanny got up and did La Prake, and I thought, this is absolutely marvellous. So I'd like to do first epistle to John La Prake tonight, an old Scots bard.
Good.
I'd like to attempt it anyway. Should it be Breers or Briars, though? That's a question.
Breers.
Bit of a debate. Willie, you say Breers. Right, well, for you tonight, I'll raise my Edinburgh crystal glass. I got it in a charity shop in Edinburgh.
I'll raise my IKEA in.
So it's Edinburgh crystal to me. Well, Breers and Woodbines budding green, and Patrick's screchen looted in, and morning pussy whidding scene, inspire my muse. This freedom in an unknown freen, I pray excuse. On fastening we had our rockin', to caw the crack in weaver stockin', and there was muckle fun and joking, you needna doot. At length we had a hearty yoken, it sang about. There was ye sang among the rest, I bin them all, it pleased me best, that some kind husband had addressed to some sweet wife, that thrilled the heartstrings through the breast, aw to the life. I've scarce heard ocht described sae weel, what generous manly bosom feel. Thought I, can this be Pope, or Steele, or Beattie's work? They told me 'twas an odd kind chiel about Muirkirk. It pat me fidgin fain to hear't, and say about him there I speert, then all that kenned him round declared, he had in Jane, that nane excelled it, few come near't, it was sae fine. That set him to a pint o' ale, and either douce or merry tale, or rhymes and sangs he'd made himsel, or witty catches, tween Inverness and Teviotdale, he had few matches. Then up I gat and swore an aith, though I should pawn my plew and graith, or dee a cadger powny's daith at some dike back, a pint and gill, I'd gie them baith. to hear your crack. But first and foremost I should tell, I maced as soon as I could spell, I to the crambo jingle fell, though rude and rough, yet croon to a body's cell does weel enough. I am nae poet in a sense, but just a rhymer like by chance, and hate learning, nae pretence, yet what the matter? Whene'er my muse does on me glance, I jingle at her. Your critic folk may cock their nose and say, how can you e'er propose? You, wha ken hardly verse for prose, to mak a sang? But by your leaves, my learned foes, you're maybe wrang. What's all your jargons o' your schools, your Latin names for horns and stools? If honest nature made you fools, what sayers your grammars? You'd better ta'en up spades and shoels, or napping hammers. A set o' dull, conceited hashes confuse their brains in college classes. They gang in stirks and come out asses, plain truth to speak, and saying they think to climb Parnassus by dint o' Greek. Gie me a spark o' nature's fire, that's all the learning I desire. Then, though I drudge through dub and mire, at plew or caird, my muse, though hamely in attire, may touch the heart. Oh, for a spunk o' Allen's glee, or Ferguson's the bald and slee, or bright Laprake's my friend to be, if I can hit it, that would be lear enough for me, if I could get it. Now, sir, if you hae friends enow, though real friends I believe are few, yet if your catalogue be fu', I's no insist, but if you want a friend that's true, I'm on your list. I winna blaw about mysel, as ill I like my thoughts to tell, but friends and folk that wish me well, they sometimes ruse me, though I'm on own, as many still as for abuse me. There's ye wee thought, there's ye wee small folk, God, help me, Willie. There's
like we fought the whiles lay to me.
There's ye wee small thought the whiles lay to me. I like the lasses, God forgive me, for many a plack they wheedle frae me at dance or fair. Maybe some other thing they gae me, they weel can spare. But Mauchline race or Mauchline fair, I should be proud to meet you there. Was hae ye next discharged to care, if we forgether, and hae a swap o' rhyming wear wi' yin another. The four-gill chap we's gar him clatter, and cursing him wi' reeking water, saying we'll sit down and tak our whitter to cheer our heart, and faith we's be acquainted better afore we part. Awa, ye selfish waddly race, for thinks it haven's sense and grace, even love and friendship should give place to catch the plack. I dinna like to see your face, nor hear your crack. But ye, whom social pleasure charms, whose hearts the tide of kindness warm, who haud your beings on the terms, each aid the others, come to my bowl, come to my arms, my friends, my brothers. But to conclude my lang epistle, as my old pen's worn to the gristle, 2 lines for you would gar me thistle, who am most fervent, while I can neither sing or whistle. Your friend and servant, Robert Burns. Thank you.
Done, Jimmy.
I was muted, Jimmy. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I know.
of course, Willie. Of course.
That's good, good.
I had to race to unmute mine. I was muted as well. I'm saying, oh no.
I did that twice through the woods with the rugs today perfectly. Can you imagine that? I like the painting of the, is that a person or a collie dug up in the left? Is that a Springer Spaniel? Aye. Yes.
It is, yes. Hang on.
That's just one of the dogs, Jimmy. That's just one of them, though.
I know there's 2, Alec.
A little bit wet. Hang on.
Wow. Is that your own work?
It is, yeah.
Well done. That's
Oh, bad, eh?
phenomenal.
He's
Only
taking
started that
commissions.
during lockdown.
Well, that's tremendous.
Very good.
Feeds the kids.
Oh yeah, lovely, lovely.
So listen, gentlemen, unfortunately, Callum, who was supposed to be joining us, couldn't come. So I just did a wee look around what I've got on my computer, and I found a wee pipe set that I recorded. What's happening here? Is everybody still here? I found a wee recording that I made at a burn supper a wee while ago.
We can see it coming. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, what about that?
Great.
Is everybody still here? Where are we? Aye. The great Pipe Major Gordon Walker, probably, you know, in my opinion, certainly within the top 10 best pipers in the world today. That was at a Burn Supper, I think, in 2018, maybe 2019, at the Cumnock Cronies Burns Club. Fabulous piper, Gordon. I've known him for very many years. He was pipe major of the RHF lately, and new an instructor at the National Piping Centre. But a top-notch piper when you can get him sober, which isn't very often, I've got to say. But the way he introduces that, you know, you're just thinking, has he had a few? And then he just goes on to, you know, dazzle you with his undoubted brilliance. Undoubted brilliance. Ken, what have you got for us this evening?
Need to unmute, I think.
Sorry, Ken, I muted you a little earlier on. I'm just...
Is that better?
Yes, perfect.
You can hear me now.
Indeed.
Bad luck. In David's very impressive mortal memory, he showed an image of the event that inspired this little gem. "Ah, where are you gone, you crawling fairly? Your impudence protects you sorely. I canna say, but you strunt rarely, our gauze and lace. Though, faith, I fear you dine but sparely on sic a place. You ugly, creeping, blasted oner, detested, shunned by saunt and sinner. How dare you set your foot upon her, say fine a lady? Gae somewhere else and seek your dinner, on some poor body. Swith and some beggar's haffet squattle. There you may creep and sprawl and sprattle, wi' other kindred jumping cattle in shoals and nations, where horn nor bane ne'er dare unsettle your thick plantations. Now, hut ye there, you're out of sight, below the fat rolls, snug and tight. Nah, faith ye yet, you'll no be right till you've got on it, the very topmost towering height o' Mrs. Bonnet. My sooth, right bold you set your nose out, as plump and grey as honey grosset. Oh, for some rank mercurial roset, or fell red smedum, I'd gie ye sick a hearty doset, but dress your druddum. I wouldn't have been surprised to spy ye on an old wife's fleeing toy, or abling some bit daddy boy on's wily coat. But Mrs. Fine Limnardy, fie, how dare ye do it? Oh, Jenny, dinna toss your heed and set your beauties a breed. You little ken the cursed speed that Blasty's making. They winks and finger ends I dread are notice taking. Ah, what some power the gift to gie us, to see ourselves as others see us. It wad frae mony a blunder frae us and foolish notion. What airs in dress and gait would lay us, and even devotion.
Done, Ken.
Excellent.
Magic as ever. Magic as ever. Charlie, can I ask you for another song?
Oh, right. Just a minute. I can't go somewhere. I've been looking around the room and a bit like myself, there's a few white pows. And looking out into the garden, there's no very much growing, but I know it'll come back in spring. So this is the old man's winter thought. But lately seen in gladsome green, the woods rejoice the day. Through gentle showers, the laughing flowers, in double pride. But new our joys are shed on winter blasts so low. Yet maiden May and rich array again shall bring. But my white cow, ye kindly thou, shall melt the snows away. My truncle yield, but busser bield, sinks in time's wind. Oh, age has its weary days, a night so sleepless pale. Thou counting time, O youthful prime, why comes thou not? Why comes thou not again? That's it. Short song.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mic unmuted. Well done, Charlie. Well done, well done. Right, I'm going to give you the next one. I'm just going to pull this up here. Where are we? That's the one I'm wanting. And I think David already alluded to the fact that I was going to share this with you. So the Cotter's Saturday night. My loved, my honoured, much respected friend, no mercenary bard his homage praise. A simple pride I scorn each selfish end, my dearest meeds a friend's esteem and praise. To you I sing in simple Scottish lays the lowly train in life's sequestered scene. The native feelings strong, the guileless ways, what taken in a cottage would he been? What though he's worth unknown, for happier there, I ween. November's chill blaws loud wi' angry shough. The shortening winter day is near a close. The miry beasts retreating through the plouch. The blackening trains across to their repose. The toil-worn cotter frae his labour goes. This night, his weekly moil is at an end. Collects his spades, his mattocks, and his hoes, hoping the morn and rest and ease to spend, and weary o'er the moor his course does homeward bend. At length his lonely cot appears in view beneath the shelter of an aged tree. The expectant wee things toddling stake her through to meet their dad with flichter, noise and glee. His wee bit ingle blinking bonily, his clean hearthstone, his thrifty wife, his smile. The lisping infant prattling on his knee does all his weary cuck and care beguile and makes him quite forget his labour and his toil. Belive, the elder bairns come drapping in, at service out among the farmers round. Some cod a pluch, some herd, some tenty run a canny errand to a neighbour town. Their eldest hope, their Jenny, woman grown, and youth for bloom, love sparkling in her eye, comes hame perhaps to show a braw new gown, or deposit her sair 1 penny fee to help her parents dear, if they in hardship be. With joy, unfeigned brothers and sisters meet, and each for others' welfare kindly speers. The social lures, swift-winged, unnoticed fleet, each tells the uncles that he sees or hears. The parents, partial, aye, the hope for years, anticipation forward points the view. The mother, with her needles and her shears, gars all clays look amaist as good's the new. The father, mixes all with admonition due. Their maesters and their mistresses command the Junkers all are warned to obey and mind their labour with an ardent hand and near, though to sicht, to jouk or play, and oh, be sure to fear the Lord always, and mind your duty duly, morn and night, lest in temptation's path ye gang astray, implore his counsel and assist in might. They never soaked in vain that soaked the Lord the richt. But hark, a rap comes gently at the door. Jenny, what kens the meaning of the same, tells who a neighbour lads come o'er the moor to do some errands and convoy her hame. The wily mother sees the conscious flame sparkle in Jenny's ee and flush her cheek. With heart-struck, anxious care, inquires his name, while Jenny Hawthorns is afraid to speak. Well pleased the mother hears its name, well worthless rake. With kindly welcome Jenny brings him bane, a strapping youth, he tacks the mother's eye. Blithe, Jenny sees the visits no well ta'en, the feeder cracks a horse's plucks and kai, the youngster's eartless heart o'erflows with joy. But blate and laith, scarce can well behave, the mother, with a woman's wiles, can spy what makes the youth say bashful and say grave. Well pleased to think her bairns respect it with a leave. Oh, happy love, where love like this is found. Oh, heartfelt rapture, bliss beyond compare. I've paced much this weary mortal round, and sage experience bids me this declare. If heaven, I draft a heavenly pleasure spare, one cordial in this melancholy vale, is when the modest youthful loving pair in others' arms breathe out the tender tale beneath the milk-white thorn that scents the evening gale. Is there, in human form that bears a hurt, a wretch, a villain lost to love and truth that can, with studied, sly and snare ne'er betray sweet Jenny's unsuspecting youth? Curse on his perjured hearts, dissemblance smooth, are honour, virtue, conscience all exiled? Is there no pity? No relenting ruth points to the parents fondling o'er their child, then paints the ruin made, the near distraction wild. But now the supper crown their simple board, the halesome porridge, King of Scotia's food. The soup their only hockey does afford, that yont the Halland snugly chows its could. The dame brings forth in complimental mood to grace the lad her wheel hind kebbuck fell, and after he's pressed and after cause it good. The frugal wifey garrulous will tell how 'tis a towman, all St. Lint was the bell. The cheer for supper done, with serious face they round the ingle form a circle wide. The sire turns forth with patriarchal grace, the big Haw Bible, yince his father's pride. His bonnet reverently is laid aside, his lyre hoffets wearing thin and bare. Those strains that once did sweet on Zion glide, he wheels a portion with judicious care, and let us worship God, he says with solemn air. They chant their eartless notes in simple guise. They tune their hearts, by far the nobler aim. Perhaps Dundee's wild warbling measures rise, or plaintive martyrs worthy of the name, or noble Elgin beats the heavenward flame. The sweetest far as Scotia's holy lays. Compared with these, Italian trills are tame. The tickle ear nae heartfelt raptures raise, nae unison hae they wi' our Creator's praise. The priest-like father reads the sacred page, how Abraham was the friend of God and high, or Moses bade eternal warfare wage with Amalek's ungracious progeny, or how the royal bard did groaning lie beneath the stroke of heaven's avenging ire, or Job's pathetic plaint and wail and cry, or rapt desire's wild seraphic fire, or other holy seers that stroke the sacred lyre. Perhaps the Christian volume is the theme, how guiltless blood for guilty man was shed, how he who in heaven bore the second name had nocht whereon in heaven and ere to lay his head, how his first followers and servants sped the precepts sage. They wrote to many a land, how he who lone on Patmos banished saw in the sun a mighty angel stand and heard great Babylon's doom proclaimed at heaven's command. Then kneeling before heaven's eternal king, the saint, the father and the husband praise. Hope springs exulting in triumphant wing, that thus they all shall meet in later days there, ever bask in uncreated rays, no more to sigh or shed a bitter tear, together hymning the Creator's praise, in such society, yet still more dear, while circling time moves round in an eternal sphere. Compared with this, how poor religion's pride, with all its pomp of method and of art, when men display to congregations wide devotion's every grace, except the heart, the power and sense, the pageant will desert, the pompous strain, the sacerdotal stole, yet haply in a cottage far apart, may hear well-pleased the language o' the soul, and in his book of life the inmates poor enroll. Then hameward each took after several way, the young cottagers retire to rest, the parent pair their secret homage pay, and proffer up to heaven the warm request that he who calms the raven's clamorous nest and decks the lily fair in flowery pride may, in the ways wisdom sees the best, for them and for their little ones provide, but chiefly in their hearts with grace divine preside. From scenes like these, old Scotia's grandeur springs. What Maxer loved at home, revered abroad, princes and lords are but the breath of kings, and honest man's the noblest work of God, and certes, and fair virtue's heavenly road, the cottage leaves the palace far behind. What is a lordling's pomp? A cumbrous load, disguising off the wretch of humankind, studied in arts of hell, in wickedness refined. Oh, Scotia, my dear, lang may thy hardy sons of rustic toil be blessed with peace and joy and sweet content, and oh, may heaven their simple lives prevent from luxury's contagion, weak and vile. Then, however crowns and coronets be rent, a virtuous populace will stand a while and stand a wall of fire around their much-loved isle. O thou who poured the patriotic tide that streamed through great unhappy Wallace heart, who dared to nobly stem tyrannic pride, or nobly die the second glorious part. The patriot's God peculiarly thou art, his guide, redeemer, comfort and reward. Oh, never, never Scotia's realm desert, but still the patriot and the patriot bard in bright succession raise her ornament and guard.
Well done, Carmick. Excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you, one and all.
Brilliant, brilliant.
Well, would anyone like to put anything forward?
Cammy, just can I just make one wee comment, please?
Of course you may, Alan.
All right. The Bachelors evening at Tarbowton, I think this would be its 16th gathering, and there's one guy missing. The one who has not missed a garden supper down at the Bachelors Club for all these years is the name of Bob DL. And maybe you could just allow me just 2 minutes, please, just to acknowledge my friendship to Bob DL.
If you would, Alex, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you very much. A very long time friend, and I think, as most of you know, a former traffic cop many years ago. But I think tonight I'd focus a great family man with Margaret, his two sons, Gordon and Alan, a whole bundle of grandchildren, and I think he's up to, I think Margaret's now up to 8 or 9 great-grandchildren, and very much a family man, devoted to his family right to the end. But also a lifelong Burnsian, a member of Motherwell United Services Burns Club, also of Faldhouse and Croft Head Burns Club, and an honorary member and founder member of Kilbride Burns Club, based in East Kilbride. Very active all his days in LABC, Lanarkshire Association of Burns Club, and I think the particular pinnacle was his being elected as president of the Robert Burns World Federation. I'm pretty sure in 1996, I think that's right, was his year, and that was a source of great pride for him. He was very active. Annual schools competition locally he organised in the finals and so on, but also took part and helped organise the national competition, and that was a great effort for him every year with the committee of the Federation. Very much sought after as a Burns speaker, member of the Guild of Burns Speakers, of course. For several years, perhaps 6 or 7 years, he was the driving force. He and I put forward a lot of concert parties who went around many different social clubs and elderly places, sheltered housing complexes and so on, doing things like the life of Burns. Bob, the narrator, I would be doing a bit of poetry, but we also had 3 singers or so and a pianist with us, audience participation and so on, and we loved that to bits for years. That was a great source of enjoyment for us. As I mentioned, he was there at the outset when John Haining, when he started the Bachelors Tarbowton nights 15, 16 years ago. So he's a great guy. He would have been here tonight, without doubt. I'm looking at a screen here with a couple of blanks, spaces at the bottom, and all night long I've thought of Bob's face being in there, because you all know, as I know, that he would have been here tonight and enjoyed himself. So I miss him, and I thought I would just like to make that wee tribute. I was trying to recall how, in his many immortal memories, quite a few times he used the words of the Henry Wordsworth Longfellow, I think the professor of English literature at Harvard a long time ago. And Longfellow, in his tribute to Burns, David, in that amazing immortal memory, talked about the admiration of other poets for Robert Burns. And so it was, and very much so with Henry Wordsworth Longfellow. I see amid the fields of air a ploughman who in foul and fair sings at his task. So clear, we know not if it is. Laverock's song we hear are his, nor care to ask. And then the final verse Bob used so often, he said, his presence, Burns' presence, his presence haunts this room tonight, a form of mingled mist and light from that far coast. Welcome beneath this roof of mine, welcome, this vacant chair is thine, dear guest and ghost. And Bob, with his always mischievous humour, I think would enjoy, because when I read that tonight, I thought it may well have read, his presence haunts this Zoom tonight, a form of mingled mist and light from that far coast. Welcome beneath this room of mine. Welcome, this vacant screen is thine, dear guest and ghost. I'll miss him, we'll all miss him, but he was a great Burnsian and a super guy. Scott Cammy, thank you for allowing me to just make a few comments about my friend.
Not at all, Alex. Thank you so much.
Bob DL.
Bob DL.
Thank you.
Bob DL.
Well, I wonder, Dougie, if you would maybe give us a song just to finish us off.
Glad you didn't hear me clear my throat there. Song to finish. Well, how's about, as David was saying earlier on, why don't we have Robert's March? Now, normally I would probably play a Baran for this one as well, but I think just because the microphone doesn't like me singing much, I'll get away over here and see if that helps. But feel free to join in. I'll do this one a cappella. Scots way Wallace bled, Scots van Bruce's of times led, welcome to your glory bed, oh, victory. As the day and as the year, see the front of the see approach Proud Edward's court, slavery. Will be a traitor knave, can fill a coward's grave, sick cases be a slave,
let him
and free. For Scotland's king and all, freedom's sword will strongly draw. Freeman stand and freeman fall, follow me. Aye, oppressions, woes and pains, bonds and servile chains, we will drain our dearest veins, we shall be free. Lead the proud usurper's law, against foe and every foe, the parties and every blow, let us die. Scots, way Wallace bled, Scotsman, the flames led, welcome day of glory bed, for victory. As the day and as the hour, see the front of battle, see approach Proud Edward's court, kings and slavery, kings and slavery.
Bravo, bravo. Go.
Thank you.
We can see the the restrictions of bandwidth quite clearly.
You go on a diet.
Just a wee comment.
I think I was on the second verse and somebody was on the first verse. I think it was coming back to me and I'm thinking, am I singing the wrong lyrics?
That made it. That was great. Absolutely great. I kind of, you'd mentioned Gordon, the piper earlier. He told me, he probably told you this story. We were down at the Dumfries Arms in Cumnock one night, and he was obviously the piper. And we were waiting to go into the body of the hall. He was piping the entourage through. And he told me one night he was leading off the procession, but it was swing doors, fire doors. So they got a broom and put it up to keep the doors open while we all, no, I wasn't there that night, while they all went through. Anyway, he led off right round the hall, round the back of the top table and stood. There was nobody behind him. His main drone had caught the handle, knocked it down and the door shut and no one could get through. So, aye.
That's classic. Oh, brilliant.
I didn't think you would drop a clanger doing the Twa Dogs.
How's it played? Is it one piece? Is it?
I thought you were adding Greece to the Grand Tour. Smashing plates.
Could we come to an end with memories from all of us, all the boys around the table, of things that have gone wrong with a burn supper?
Why?
There's nothing that has not gone wrong with a burn supper. we have not observed or been part of or been responsible for. I remember a burn supper, for example, for a starter, in Fenwick Moor, with the late Chief Inspector John Elliott, who one of the finest immortal memoirists I ever came across. And he was a man of great power within the police and out of uniform. And he raised his ski-and do to spear the haggis, whereupon he brought it down and the ski-and-do went through the haggis, through the ashet and into the table, and the ashet fell to pieces with the haggis on it. Whereupon the owner of the restaurant came up and said, "Hey, wait a minute, that was my best ashet." gathered up the haggis, warm, reeking, rich. Had to carry it out manually.
Oh dear.
But the haggis causes more trouble at burn suppers than almost anything else, does it not?
I think I could carry on from that, David, with pick up my pal Bobby DL again. He and I went out to do an afternoon supper one year, a lunchtime supper or something in Carluke. And it was a kind of ladies gathering, elder ladies group, maybe 25 or 30 there.
Yeah.
So we were just doing the whole lot ourselves, other than singing, of course, which neither of us could do. But we'd pieced together a bit of fun, very light-hearted. When we got there, the lady who'd been in touch with me gave me a wave. She says, "Can I speak to you a minute?" I said, "Well, what's the matter?" She said, what do you do if the haggis is burst? That's why you turn it over. No, she says, "Come here and see this." And in the kitchen, she lifted the lid, and here was this skin floating on top of a pot of boiling barley soup. He said, so what do we do now? I said, have you not got another one? No, I haven't. Have you a shop handy? You haven't haggis. No, we've nothing there. So I said, have you a colander? Aye, I've got a colander. So there we went. She emptied this colander and this soup, got a plate. On the plate was this mess of barley and rubbish. Got some cling film. Meantime, out in the hall, Bob hadn't a clue all this was going on. So that was all cling filmed up, and he had his knife. He always carried this huge knife to carry out. So I said, "Ladies, would you please everybody stand and welcome in the haggis?" Well, I've never seen Bob trying to get through cling film. You're right, David. There's every story around about haggis, all true. Wonderful.
Quite early on, Charlie, you were discussing the story about having to toast a balloon at the Plumed Horse. And the very first burn supper that I went to in the Black Watch, the Cottle's Mess burn supper, at that stage, military burn suppers were very, very strict, extremely strict. Everyone had to, you would be in the mess for about an hour before the actual supper went on, and then after you took your seat, that was you. You were a prisoner, until after all the sangs and clatter were all done. You couldn't go for a pee. And so there was this fella serving in the Black Watch at the time who had actually previously been a Texas Ranger. His name was Rosie. That was his surname. I can't remember what his first name was. But he had actually brought a prophylactic with him. In order to have a pee into this Durex, and then he got one of the waiters to kind of smuggle it back out. So the waiter had come in with a haggis, nice and firm on the platter, and disappeared with this wobbly pipe. Fluid filled.
I know, it's nothing. That's hilarious.
That's wonderful.
I recall Ian Bruce telling me he was invited to play at the Edinburgh Folk Club, the Burns night. And the Edinburgh Folk Club at that time was held at Edinburgh University in the Pleasance, and it was organised by the students. And Ian turns up and the night's going on when one of the students said to him, "We've forgotten the haggis. We've forgot, there's no haggis." And Ian said, quick as a flash, didn't bother. There's a fish and chip shop about 200 yards from here. Here's some money, go away and buy 40 haggis suppers, which they did. And that's what they had, haggis and chips on that night.
I still remember the burn supper in Mauchline, just not for the faint-hearted, and the chairman saying, "Hey, lads, quite now, to let you understand, in the haggis in 5 minutes is to be piped in by Archie Banks for Kilmarnock, and in 5 hours is to be piped out again by Armitage Shanks of Borhead."
Well, Listen, gentlemen, I would love to keep this going. I really would. I dearly would. But unfortunately, my youngest daughter has just arrived back in the house, and so my broadband's been cut in half because she'll be streaming half a dozen things up there.
Hi, Maggie.
Well done.
I was about to tell you one there as well, Cammy. I just remembered one. Just before you finish, this is another military burns. I mean, my only experiences of burn suppers have predominantly been military, and it was one of the band burn suppers, and we used to hold it in the Royal Scot Club in Edinburgh. And we got to the evening was going well, absolutely fantastic, and we got to the point of Tam O'Shanter, and we thought we'll have a guest speaker of Tam O'Shanter. Now, someone else was organising this. And we said, we'll now have the ex-Garrison Sergeant Major to do Tam O'Shanter for us, at which point we all turned to the top table. There was no ex-Garrison Sergeant Major because someone had actually forgotten to invite him. So, at which point everyone turned to me because you all think that I'm a prodigy of Cammy Goodall. And they went, Duke, you do it, and threw the paper at me. And I was like, never done it before in my life, so I managed to stand up and cuff it. But in all fairness, I was reading it off the script. But yeah, that was a good one.
Well done. Well done.
Gents, just before we go, I think we do need a huge round of applause for our chairman and organiser for the well done, Cammy. Well done.
Here.
Well done. Well done, everyone.
Lovely to see you all again.
It's great to see you all. Lovely to see you all.
Super.
Will you know, come back again?
Look forward to seeing you all in the flesh.
You know,
Cammy, we're to meet again in January, I trust, are we?
well, we need to wait and see how things are progressing, you know, because there is just the possibility that by March we might see light at the end of the tunnel and we could have, you know, a regular supper. But certainly I think this is you know, it's a way forward, you know, in absence of anything better. So yeah, I mean, I'd be keen to you know, to do something in January for sure.
Yes.
Good.
Good.
Oh,
Well,
thanks very much.
everyone.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, one and all.
Good night.
Thanks again, Cammy.
Gordon, I've not seen Gordon for a long while. Good to see you, Gordon.
Hi, see you, mate.
Right, you're very.
Thanks, Santa.
Thought you were John Wayne, a quiet man. Sitting in there. You in your small corner.
Good night, folks.
Right, well
Okay,
done.
gents.
Thanks,
All the
Cammy.
best.
Well
Take
done.
care.
Well done, Cammy.
Bye.
Thank you.